Just make a push for them.
Father, we come to you this evening, placing this meeting in your hands, Lord, that you would direct us and direct us as you see fit, and direct our hearts and minds in the right direction as we discuss politics, legislation, and also voting, Lord. We just appreciate the fact that in this country, we can come together for religion, politics, and a lot of other issues that we've got going on in this country. Lord, we just pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, John, you've got
Okay. Everybody hear me all right? Yes. I will belt it out. If anybody has trouble, just put the hand of the ear, the old signal. See if I can keep this going here. How's everybody doing tonight?
Good. Welcome home.
Thank you. It's good to be home. All right, there we go. All right, so I got a slideshow for you all tonight that it'll hopefully inspire you to ask questions and help you to follow along with what I'm going to share with you all. How many of you had a chance to follow any part of the session? Okay, a few people did. Good group across the whole room. So that was one of the things that I encourage you all to do, and I want to keep encouraging everybody to get involved with it. That's how we make this a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. So appreciate those of you who had a chance to check in on what we were doing, and I know from my perspective it was a pretty contentious session. That's to be expected as the conservatives start to really push the insiders, away from their power, a strong grip of power on the government. And so we were challenging that, and there were articles right off the bat, first day, the Wyoming Freedom Caucus was killing bills on introduction because we had the power to do that. We had, on introduction during a budget session, every non-budgetary bill requires a 2/3 vote to be introduced. And the real complaint was that it was these committee bills that were being killed. And we ended up killing 1/3 of the committee bills on introduction. But I just want to kind of share this with you. Bills come, and then they die, and then they get resurrected, and they come again the next year. Well, typically your committee bills or your leadership's bills coming back after they've been killed as a personal bill, coming back as a committee bill. And the committees spent a lot of time and energy on that through the interim. In other words, this off time that we're in. We'll have 2 to 3 meetings per committee. And they were complaining about the money that was spent on those bills, but really we killed those bills based on what was in those bills. Anything growing government, anything taking away your liberty, anything that was woke, that type of thing. And so we did that, and there was quite a bit of pushback on that and complaining. And what that led to was a lot of our bills were killed on introduction as retribution. There was an important bill, I think everybody would consider this important. There was a bill that prohibited private funds from being used in elections. In other words, the Zuck bucks. And that bill made it to committee, so it made it past the 2/3 introduction, and then a legislator from the Rock Springs Green River area tabled that bill, brought a motion, and that committee that had it, which was corporations at the time, tabled that bill and basically killed it for this session. And obviously we've got a presidential election coming, and this would have been a good time to have anything that had to do with election integrity, getting that done. And unfortunately, that one legislator and the other members of the committee that voted to table it really took that opportunity away from us. Now, in the Wyoming Freedom Caucus, we made an effort to pull that out of the committee and that failed as well. So you're going to see a lot, even though we were trying to get them out of a particular committee or back to the floor where they could be debated and passed further. And there was a bill that was going to die, and it actually got resurrected over in the Senate side, and that was a bill that prohibited gun-free zones in the state of Wyoming. So that bill did get onto the Senate floor after we passed it in the House. A committee had killed it, and then they got it out to the Senate floor, and from there it went on, and now it's on the governor's desk. We'll see what he does with it. I would be surprised if he wants to have guns walking around the Capitol. He seems to be somebody that's concerned about that, even though it's good law-abiding citizens that are carrying those weapons. All right, so this was a budget session, folks. Let's see if I can get this to figure out what keys work here. One of the most important things we had to work on besides the budget was property taxes. How many of you have seen double-digit increases in your property tax on your home or other property in the last few years? So 20 different bills were introduced, and 4 of them survived. And I gave everybody a sheet that describes those 4 bills. So unless you've had a chance to review it and have questions about it, I'm going to really go quickly over those. But out of the 20, 4 survived. One of the things, and Abby's here today too, guys, there's another legislator here from House District 3, which is the southern half of the county. Everybody know who I am? I didn't even introduce myself, so. Okay. John Bear, House District 31, I represent the eastern side of town. All right, so Abby will attest to this. Many, many times we tried to make these bills better than they are. And what we did is we tried to make them weighted more friendly to the taxpayer. And what we heard over and over again is we can't afford this. We can't afford to give money back to the taxpayers. And the reason that's important is because the state government is constitutionally required to fund education in the state of Wyoming for K through 12, okay? And when we take and we lower the property taxes via these bills, then it affects the funding of schools. So what we have to do is something called backfill. And so each of these bills, some of them had backfill, some didn't. But that, when it came to the backfill, the discussion became, well, can we afford to make the education system whole, even though we're giving property tax payers a break? And oftentimes, we would bring amendments to make it a much better bill as far as giving more people a break and making it fair across the board to all taxpayers. And we heard that a lot, didn't we, Abby? We can't afford this.
Spending. We heard.
Yeah, they called it spending, giving you all a tax break. They called it spending, kind of like you hear from the Democrats in Washington. Okay, so if you have questions, anybody have questions about those 4 bills? The first 2 you have to apply for, so you have to qualify. And then the last 2, 45 and 54, those, and by the way, the first 2 have been turned into law. The governor signed them. The last 2 are still on the governor's desk right now, so this is tentative. But the last 2 you do not have to qualify for. It's for everybody. The first one puts a 4% cap on any increases on your property taxes in the future. Okay? So you can no longer, your property taxes will no longer go up more than 4%. Problem is, many of us had, double-digit and even in some areas of the state, triple-digit increases in the last 3 years. And so there's really a need for relief. Some people are about to lose their homes because of that. And so the last one, Senate File 54, and I got to change that, it says House Bill, but it was a Senate file. That gives everybody a 25% reduction on their property taxes for the next 2 years, up to $2 million. So those are the tax bills. Any questions on the tax bills, property tax bills? Well, I'm doing a great job. Everybody with me? Yes, sir, back in the back.
For the people that are paid 20 or 30% in the next few years, is there any way to repair that?
Yes, but you would have had to have done it in the year that you received the tax bill. So this year, you would have needed to do that by now already. You would have needed to appeal that at the assessor's office in your county. Fortunately, this year, this 4%, as long as the governor signs it, this 4% will apply. So me personally, I got a 30% increase on my home this last year. This 4% will apply to that. Some things that won't apply, it doesn't apply to the land, and it doesn't apply to any outbuildings that you have. So it's just the structure of your home. So statewide, and I don't know, everybody's got a different amount of land with their home. Statewide, it averages at 30% of your tax bill is the land. So this 4% cap is only going to apply to the building. But in year 2, it will apply to the land. Okay? And then it will end, unless the next legislature renews it. So it's a 2-year program, 24 and 25, and you get 25% off the home this year, and you get 25% off the home and the land the following year. And the legislature put $200 million for the backfill back to the schools for that. But we were routinely fighting to get it above 115, then it went to the Senate for concurrence, and it ended up at 200. So almost doubled it at the very last, but the way they doubled it is they allowed it up to $2 million homes. Okay, so if you own a $100,000 home, you're going to get a $25,000 break. Okay, if you have a $200,000, it'll be $50, all the way up to $2 million.
Hey, sir, you
Yes, sir.
mentioned $200 million backfill. What's the source of that? Where's that money coming from?
So I'll repeat the question since he didn't have a mic. What's the source of those funds to backfill the school districts back out in the state? The answer is from state funds, which 40% of that comes from mineral taxation. The rest comes from your property taxes and sales tax and revenue off of our investments. So that money is what is going to be applied to that. But I want to remind everybody that last year we put away $1.4 billion, into savings. This year we put another $700 million, so over $2 billion is put into savings, while the taxpayers have received no relief whatsoever. And these reliefs are about 2% of our budget this year, or over the next 2 years actually. Okay, only about 2% went back to the taxpayer. So did that answer your question, Hector? Okay. Yes, sir.
Question for you. As you all well know, that coal sales are going to be decreasing, not increasing, right?
So his point is coal sales are going to be decreasing. Okay.
And that happens, obviously lower revenue, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and you're talking about the largest line item in the budget is education, correct?
Mm-hmm. It takes up about half of the budget.
So if we don't take a hard look at what's going on there, you're going to be backfilling or increasing taxes down the road in the future.
When we get to the budget, which does not include education, the half of the budget that applies to education, I'm going to give you some big numbers that do include education, but we only worked on the other half, okay? And we can have that discussion then about education, what we're spending on education, and whether that's going to last for the long run, that type of thing. So there you go. All right? Anything else on taxes, property tax relief?
I noticed it says on the bottom, may not be combined with other exemptions.
Yeah, each one of those, and you'll see on the sheet that I passed out, it'll tell you whether you have to take one exemption or the other. So if you take this one, the cap may not be able to be applied. If you take, because it's an exemption as well. If you take the one for the 25-year homeowners that are 65 and older, if you take that one, you may not get this one. Okay, so you got to look at what's going to be the best for you. But these are going to be automatically applied. And I believe that the 4% cap, since it's going to be applied to everybody, it's probably not going to apply to that phrase right there. You'll be able to do both. Okay? Good question.
So that'd be more or less automatic?
Yes, you don't have to go down to the county and apply for it. You're going to see it on your property tax bill. In fact, the way it's worded, you'll have a number there that says this is how much you saved, because the legislature was so good to give you a break, okay? It's an election gimmick that the insiders put on there because they want you to feel good about re-electing them, okay?
Just like the city putting their 1%
Yep,
sales tax
Same
signs
idea.
up all over the place.
that's right. Makes you feel good about electing those folks, okay? Any other questions before I move on? I'm going to get us going here because we got a lot to cover. And I know Patty has a lot to share too. Okay, American and Wyoming values. So we had a parental rights bill that started out in the Senate, came to the House, and we were able to make this a very good bill. If you remember, last year we had the Florida bill. In Florida, the detractors call it the Don't Say Gay bill, which protected K through 3 from having to do gender studies. And it also made it imperative that the school district had to tell the parents anytime there was a change in the status of the child. That did not happen in Rock Springs. If you pay attention to the news, there was a young girl that was transitioning at school, and her parents were completely unaware of it. The teachers were assisting in this, the administration was assisting in this, and now there's a federal lawsuit against that school district. Had we passed that bill last year, it would have kept that from happening. It would have been illegal. This year, Abby and I worked very hard, and our colleagues in the House, and we got a lot of amendments on it. Guess what? It's not just K through 3 that's prohibited from having to receive gender studies, it's K through 12. Much better than the Florida bill. And anytime you want to know if a bill is a really good bill, conservative bill, find out whether it passed with the governor's signature or not. If it didn't get his signature, like this one did not, then it's probably a good bill, all right? He refused to sign that. And by the way, if you go to the executive's website, you can read his letter and why he didn't sign it and what he thinks of that bill. It's a very interesting read. School choice. We passed an ESA bill. It's not a perfect bill, but we got it passed, and there's some little issues with it, but it's a good vehicle going forward. If we can get more conservatives elected, we can make that really a good bill. One of the worst parts of it is that it's not universal. It's really more for the poor. So if you have 500 times the federal, what's the word I'm looking for, poverty level, which I think is over $100,000 of income, you're only going to get about $600 toward this school choice. But it goes all the way up to $6,000 as you make less. So there's a graduated scale on the education savings accounts. Again, the governor hasn't made a decision on that. So if this is important to you, it'd be a good idea to let him know he needs to sign that bill and move it forward. There is some testing. It's pretty universal testing, but this does not apply to homeschoolers. If you don't take the money, none of the testing requirements apply to you, and none of the other issues apply to you. So that's one of the things, every time we touch school funding, the homeschoolers get very leery of what the government is doing, probably rightfully so.
And it can be used for private school, so that's really important that,
Yep.
those funds can be used for private school.
And that can be a religious private school. You can use it for homeschooling if you want. You will have to do the testing. And so you got a lot of options out there now. Charter school, it's not necessary to use it. Charter schools are funded through the regular education system. And we don't have any charter schools around here. Now we've lost that. I'll give it a few seconds here.
Did
So students would
Mr.
be-
Case agree with the money being used at Christian schools?
Did what agree with that?
Senator Case agree with
Oh,
the
no, no,
money
no.
being used?
No, in fact, if you look at the amendments brought by Senator Case to that bill, you'll find it very interesting. he brought an amendment that said if you're a homeschooler, you cannot teach your children creationism. That's how audacious Senator Case is.
How's he gonna know it?
Yeah.
Is he gonna
Yeah.
put a bug in your house?
Yeah, the amendment was really a joke, but the point is that he was audacious enough to bring the amendment to begin with. So I don't know, you might want to call him and see if there's something that can be done about that. He said just, if it ever did come up, just to give it time.
So you said there were strings if homeschool parents decide to take this money.
There is testing
So there's strings.
that you'd have to do.
So
Yep.
would the religious schools have the
We
same?
we had,
strings?
just so you know, we had the testing out of it at different times. That's the parental rights that I mentioned. That's another bill that failed in the House, another parental rights. We tried to attack that parental rights from several different directions. House Bill 166 is the education savings account. We had a very clean bill with no testing required, no preschool stuff, no means testing. It was a great bill, just like the one that passed the Senate last year, and then was held in the drawer of the Speaker's desk, and we tried to pull that out. That was all last year. He was politically beat up last year for doing that. And this year suddenly had a Damascus Road experience, and he brought his own bill, which was an abomination, really. It was not a good school choice bill. This one was this one actually, the bringer of this bill is our own Ken Clouston, and it was a kind of a compromise between the Speaker's bill and the bill that we had last year. I'm sorry, guys, that I'm having to fight this thing. So anyway, during negotiations, the House got out, kind of a bad bill with the testing, with the means testing, and then the Senate got a good clean bill, and then they had to go to conference and work out the differences, and that's how we got what we've got, which is, it's a good start, but you guys have got to elect conservatives. There's an article out there of the bringer of the bill, and that's our own Ken Clouston, saying that he would not support this bill the way the Senate had it. So just so you know where people are at. He wanted preschool, universal preschool paid for, and he wanted the means testing, and he wanted the testing. Now, he got all of those things, but it wasn't really quite what he wanted. The preschool piece is up to 20% of the funds can be spent on a preschool ESA, but it requires the superintendent to determine how much of it's going to be spent on that, and she has no interest in doing it. So we should be able to get through the next 12 months without any preschool funded by the state government. That, in my opinion, is welfare
You
expansion.
mentioned ESA.
Yeah, education savings account, that's what this is. So it's often called vouchers, it's also called backpack funding, a lot of different terms, but education savings account is what we call it here. Very much like the Arizona plan. In Arizona, the first time they got something going on, it was only for the reservations. So ours is only for the poor. Okay. All right. We talked about parental rights in education. Okay, the unborn, we've got one pro-life bill passed, House Bill 148, but here's the thing, we had another one that required, House Bill 148, I'll just tell you right now, it came out, was requiring that these abortion clinics had to be able to be ambulatory facilities, they had to have all kinds of certifications, and that did pass. So it's restricting abortion in the one facility that we have in the state, which is in Casper. Now, why do we need that? Does anybody know why we need that? Because we had two bills that completely outlawed abortion in the state of Wyoming. Anybody know why
No.
we're still dealing with this?
It's in court.
It's in court in Jackson, Wyoming, and they put a stay on it, so we had abortion illegal in the state for about 1 week, and then this judge in Jackson, who was just appointed by the governor, she put a stay on it, and this includes, it's actually 3 bills. One was our first trigger bill when Roe v. Wade was overturned. The second one was a prohibition on chemical abortions. And then the third one was one we passed the next year, trying to fix some of the things that the left was coming after the first bill on. They're trying to say that abortion is health care, and that's the big fight. And so that will eventually go to the Supreme Court. In the meantime, we want to make it very difficult to perform abortions in the state of Wyoming, and that's what this bill did. Now, the second bill required an ultrasound prior to having an abortion. Well, we played one of the insider tricks on them. On third reading, we took that bill, which had died, the ultrasound bill, and we amended it into this bill, and we got it passed with both requirements. So now an ultrasound is required before an abortion, and these abortion clinics have to live up to a much higher standard than they used to. Abby, jump in if you ever hear me say something that you think
Will do.
not quite right. Okay, Chloe's Law. It passed, okay? We have not seen the governor take action on it yet. So that's another one. That was a big deal last year. It was sent to a kill committee last year and destroyed. This year, we got it out of the House and the Senate as a clean bill. The only thing that they were able to do to it, they changed the name, and that's not a big deal. They took Chloe's name off of there. So it just says it's a prohibition on gender surgeries. But what they were trying to do throughout the whole process, and when I say they, I mean the insiders, the elites, the uniparty, and I say uniparty, does everybody know what I mean by that? Okay. The uniparty is the Democrats, we have 5 of them in the House, 2 in the Senate, and then all of the Republicans that vote with them, which is in the House, which is made up of 62 members, it adds up to 36. So we got 31 Republicans that vote most of the time with the Democrats, and then we got 5 Democrats. And so that gives them a majority. The Uniparty was trying to bring amendments, and most of these were from Republicans, that allowed the puberty blockers and other chemicals that are involved with this process. They also fought to allow affirming care, psychiatric care. And so we were able to defeat all of those attacks on the bill and got a very good bill out. The only thing that changed on it from when it was brought was the name of the bill. So,
John, one of the words that they would use was psychiatric treatment. That's the word that they tried slipping in there because, you know, we do want them to get counseling. I mean, that we want children that are going through gender dysmorphia to have counseling, but do we want them to have psychiatric treatment? No, we don't.
No.
Because that's part of that, where they can prescribe puberty blockers or hormone therapy. So, very sneaky.
it'll be interesting to see what the governor does with this. You know, when we had the prohibition of boys and girls sports last year, he did allow it to pass without his signature, but he said that that was draconian. You know,
Do you have
that we
any
were-
idea what he's leaning toward?
I think that politically it would be a disaster for him if he vetoed this bill. And there is no funding in the bill, so I don't believe he will be able to line item anything. And since we're out of session now and can't go back to override his veto, he has till, I believe, the 18th to make his decision. Of March. And typically, what we see from the governor is he waits right up to the end. Okay? But please, reach out to him, let him know what you think about that bill. Okay? Supposed to keep that awake. All right, House Bill 125, this is the repeal of gun-free zones. This one I mentioned earlier, it passed in the House, pretty good bill, went to the Senate and was assigned to a committee where it promptly died. It was set up to fail by our Senate president. And does anybody know who the Senate president is? He's from this area. Yeah, he represents the northern part of Campbell County and Weston and part of Weston and Ogden. Yes, Senator Ogden Driscoll. Okay, so he set that bill up to fail, and you're going to hear recurring stories of where, you know, he was manipulating by what committee he sent things to, what committee he set up for negotiating with the House, things like that. And so that bill was killed, and then the senators overrode Driscoll, and so that bill was killed, and then the senators overrode Driscoll, and if the governor will sign that, this one I doubt that he will. He may veto this one. I put it in an article recently that I thought he would veto this. And part of that was just kind of pushing on him to dare him to do it.
Which senator pushed this back up to the floor?
That was Dave Kinski from Sheridan.
From Sheridan?
Yep, he did an excellent thing there and brought that out, and basically challenged the president. And there's been quite a back and forth battle between those two, starting last summer. I've written a couple of op-eds about that. If you just search for my name and op-eds on Kinski and Driscoll, I've weighed in on it, much to the president's chagrin on that. So, but anyway, he challenged and won. And let me just take a moment and talk to you about how that's possible, okay? Because I will say that the Senate does not have a super conservative makeup in the Senate. There's 6 senators, including our Troy McEwen, that are very staunchly conservative. There's 3 that are pretty conservative, and then there's a group in the middle, and then it just swings way left. And that would be your Cale Case that was mentioned earlier, and several other of our senators. One of those 3 that's next to but not included in the 6 is Senator Steinmetz. And she put on this CO2 group that was here right as we left to session. And she's been challenging the governor on his CO2 narrative, that CO2 is a pollutant and that we need to go green. And so she's been challenging him on that. Well, when they got into session, she led a charge, got a coalition of senators together, and they overrode something that President Driscoll had done during the summer, and that was firing the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, which was Dave Kinski from Sheridan. So that has never happened in the history of the state, where halfway through a term, a chairman has been fired. And Ogden did that, but he did it, basically as a tyrant. No input from his committees, other chairmen, or the body. And so when the body got back together, day one, they brought up a motion to reinstate Kinski and did so, overriding the president of the Senate. So most of the session, Ogden Driscoll was pretty well neutered and incapable of getting much done. But he was able to influence a couple of people in the end and get the budget the way he wanted the budget. We'll get to that later. Okay? Any questions about the gun bill? There were 2 other gun bills. One prohibited, this is Senate File 105, it prohibited banks and credit card companies from tracking your purchases on guns. That passed, and let's see, do we talk about it? Let me see if I've got that in here. I think 105, here we go. So this is before the governor as well. So that's the one that prohibits banks and others from tracking your gun sales. The other one is the prohibition of red flag gun seizure. This is a bill that protects your Second Amendment, your Fourth Amendment, your Fifth Amendment, and your 14th Amendment. Is everybody familiar with what red flags are? Red flag laws? Red flag law is where your neighbor can say, my neighbor is crazy, say that about you, and a judge, without a jury, without your even showing up before the judge, can determine that your weapons need to be taken away from you. That's a red flag law. And we have a Second Amendment Preservation Act that I believe already covers that, but just to make it stronger, we brought a bill, this SF 109, to make it real clear that if anybody enforces a red flag law from the Biden administration, they'll be in trouble in the state of Wyoming. If you break an individual citizen in Wyoming's Second Amendment rights, as a police officer or a sheriff's deputy, taking away your rights, and it's found to be illegal, they will go to jail for a year. And let me tell you, if you're a law enforcement officer, that's the last place you want to be for a year. So it's a real strong Second Amendment Preservation Act. We passed that in 2022. And this is just kind of a tack-on, add-on to that. Unfortunately, the enforcement on this one is a little weak. So again, you need to elect more conservatives, and we'll come back and we'll make that a stronger bill. Any questions about gun bills? Okay. Foreign ownership of lands, anybody concerned about that? Yeah, we had one bill pass, very, very weak bill, and it really does nothing. We had some very strong bills that were brought by that Senator Steinmetz that I mentioned before, and all of those, SF-102 and SJ-2. SJ-2 is a joint resolution, and that would be to change the Constitution so that we can prohibit certain individuals and states from owning land in Wyoming. Does anybody know whether you can buy land in China? Yeah, they outlaw us from buying their land, but for some reason in Wyoming, we can't seem to outlaw them from purchasing land here. And I will tell you, over in the Senate, these saw a lot of pushback, and you can almost tell who it is that's chummy with China based on these votes. But when they got over to the House, we called the Appropriations Committee, the KILT committee in the House, and that's who took those to task. They didn't even really listen to the public input. They just simply stopped the bills from even being voted on in the committee. And the Wyoming Freedom Caucus tried to pull those two bills out, so we have a recorded vote on the floor of the House as to who was willing to work on those two bills as well. 168 and 183, those were brought by Wyoming Freedom Caucus members who, you know, they seek to prevent, again, foreign ownership. All that's really about foreign ownership. Some of it was based on just being around our bases, where our military is, and our infrastructure, our critical infrastructure, like our power plants, things like that. And others were more broad, where you couldn't, we don't want China purchasing our ag land. And some of them were just China, some of them were any enemy of the state. So those that are listed by the Department of Justice as being terrorist nations, those would be excluded from purchasing. Okay? Any questions about foreign ownership of land? Yes.
On that uranium stuff down there around the Pumpkin Buttes, now, was that bought by the Russians or Chinese?
It was through the Canadians and through Hillary Clinton on Uranium One. What the condition of that is right now, I don't know, because those things do change hands from time to time. But Barrasso, our senator, let me just take you back. We had the war in Ukraine break out in, I guess that was 2021. And at the same time, we were promoting this power plant, this nuclear power plant that's now going to go into Kemmerer, which is being funded partially by Bill Gates. That during that time frame, we brought bills. We, the Wyoming Freedom Caucus, brought bills that said that you had to buy the uranium in Wyoming, and so that would have helped that, and it would have been, we would have been able to take that away from the Russians, and we would have produced our own uranium for our own power plants. And that failed in the House. Then we brought an amendment that said it had to be American uranium, and that failed. And then we brought an amendment that said it could not be Russian uranium, and that failed. So all that kind of made the news back then in 2021, and Barrasso has been working on this since, trying to get our uranium production back up. But right now, the only place you can buy uranium to use in a power plant is Russia. So imagine that, based on the relationship we have with Russia right now. Good question. Others about...
Is that power plant going to go or not?
You know, I read an article recently about another power plant south of here that isn't going to make it financially, and the guy who predicted that one said the same thing's going to happen on this one in Kemmerer. You know, they just got delayed, now they're looking at 7 years out. It was supposed to be 5. They were pushing on us, the legislature, to pass a lot of, get rid of some roadblocks for them to make it faster. Those bills did pass. I voted no on those, but now they're being delayed by other factors. So depends on how deep Bill Gates' pockets are, and they seem to be pretty deep to me. Okay? Other questions about that? Immigration. Anybody care about immigration?
Yeah.
This bill here is covering two things, immigration and election integrity. This bill here prohibited illegal immigrants from getting a voter ID or a photo ID in the state of Wyoming, okay? To use for anything for that matter, but mostly for elections as well. So this bill passed the Senate, got all the way through the Senate, made it to a committee, it went to corporations, no, judiciary, no, it went to corporations because they considered it an election bill. And it failed there. Again, the Wyoming Freedom Caucus made an attempt to bring this bill out of the committee and get it voted on the floor, and that failed on a 28-34 vote. So that's what we're up against, folks.
Unbelievable.
Yep. Seems pretty common sense, doesn't it? And it made it halfway through the process.
I'd like to understand what the people are thinking.
They're not.
I get that's what I'm saying.
Well, you know, if you're a Democrat or a Rhino, you want open borders. These are future voters. So there really is a motivation for this. Okay? All right, any other questions about that one? Okay, largest in history. The budget, you're going to hear a ton of numbers, folks. You read different articles, you're going to, it's designed to confuse you. Okay? It's obfuscation, it's creating smoke and mirrors so that you don't know what's going on. So the easiest way to look at this is to look at all in, all the federal dollars, all the state dollars, all the money that's raised from licenses like your hunting licenses, everything, put it all together. And that number is 11.1 billion. If you look at, I gave you a sheet that gives a narrative that I put together from beginning to end what has happened. Now this bill still has not been signed by the governor. And he can line item anything in this budget, okay? He can line item veto it. And he's got until the 18th to do that. So we really don't know what this is going to look like in the end. But several things happened. Like I said earlier, it only sets aside 2% for property tax relief. There was $10 million that late one night I was trying to get pulled out of there to study whether or not we want to spend $140 million on a new museum. They're funding an arboretum in Cheyenne, and I just broke it down by the number of trees, and it's $2,333 per tree per year that we're going to pay to help Cheyenne keep their arboretum. Okay, and it does fund gender change treatments at the UW Family Practice Clinic in Casper. Now that is something that we had defunded at one point, and it got it brought back in. Okay, it started out at 10.75. Okay, that still was a 12% increase over the last budget. We, the Wyoming Freedom Caucus, brought $700 million in cuts. That would have brought it down to about 10. The House outvoted us on those 700 and went the other way by $1 million and added 300, bringing it to 11.1. And then the Senate did much like we did in the Wyoming Freedom Caucus. They actually accomplished it. They cut $800 million. And now there are articles out there from last week where we were fighting over $1.1 billion difference between the two houses. Okay? The Senate President put together, he was very angry about this $800 million that got passed him. So he put together a very conservative committee to support that budget. But 3 of those members had never spent any time on appropriations, hadn't been part of the negotiations that many of us worked on to get all of those amendments prepared. So they were kind of flying blind. And one thing led to another. That was kind of a setup by Driscoll to fail, if you will. And even though they were working very hard on it and doing the right thing, they just declared it a failure right, just a little ways into the negotiations. And then he created a whole new committee that was very left-leaning liberal and included himself. And they negotiated. It took them less than 24 hours once they put the left-leaning committee together, and they came in exactly where the House was at $11.1 billion. And that is your budget that is before the governor now. One of the good things that we got done in the budget, we defunded a Rose Bowl parade for $750,000, float in the Rose Bowl parade. And we also at one point had the DEI office, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion office in UW, defunded. That actually stayed defunded and is on the governor's desk right now. I expect him to veto that and refund that. But we also defunded gender studies, and that was put back in the 11.1 compromise. And then we also, WICHE is a program where we send our med students to Washington, and they get their med degrees working through UW and through the University of Washington. We had made stipulations that if that program was going to be funded, they could not teach affirming care. And we had that passed in the second reading, and then by third reading, more liberal legislators and the majority in the uniparty defeated that. So lots of different efforts like that. Abby, do you got any to add?
The $2.5 million for Fremont County's rec center.
Rec center, yeah. So what Abby's describing is vote purchases, folks. There was Fremont County got a rec center for $2.5 million. Sweetwater County got a $150 million high school that bought 2 votes. Okay, and that's how we ended up with that 11.1 billion instead of a $10 billion budget. Okay, that cost the taxpayers 1.1 billion. That $150 million school. So, and that's pretty harsh for me to say that in public, folks, but that really is what's happening. Abby brought an amendment to help fund the border in Texas, and that passed. We ended up giving $750,000 towards law enforcement who volunteered to go down there. So reimbursing law enforcement or their departments if they sent somebody down there to help Texas. And I think it actually helps any of the states. It doesn't matter which one they went to. Okay. Good. Anything else? Any questions? That was really fast for a $11.1 billion budget that took us 4 weeks to pass.
So really the governor has mental health as the most important issue for the state government?
Yeah, you've been reading some articles, haven't you? Yes. He came here in, what was it, November?
Yeah.
And had a 9:30 in the morning on a Monday morning town hall to promote his mental health ideas. And the number one issue is 988 hotline. And I can give you all kinds of information. Just see me afterwards and I can tell you all about the 988 hotline. What they're doing is they try to take things off the budget so that they're funded for perpetuity. They put money in a trust fund and then it gains interest and that pays for whatever the program is, and it's off budget so the legislature never looks at it again. And so you'll hear the President of the Senate, I've heard him multiple times say, we have cut the budget year in and year out over the last decade that he's been in office. What they've done is they've took capital construction out of the budget, so any of the buildings they were building, and that should have been out of the budget, but it used to be in, and now they called that a cut. We're still paying for it, it's just in a bill now. They have taken Fish and Game out of the budget, and now Fish and Game funds themselves through licenses and other taxes that go directly to them. And then they took out, most recently, tourism, and so now we have these tourism taxes on our hotels and whatnot, and all that goes directly to them. So they just keep cutting bigger chunks out of the budget, so we're not having any input on their budget, and they're calling that a cut. And so the reality is that 11.1 billion includes all of that. You gotta pull all that back in and see what we're really spending. Half of that 11.1 is education. Somebody had asked about education before and what we need to do with that. So about $5.5 million or $1 billion is education for 2 years. So $2.75 billion per year. Now, 20 years ago, we were paying $500 million, $500 million. And so in 20 years, we've quadrupled that number in 20 years. So now we're spending 20 grand per kid for education. You know, it's one of those political things that's very difficult to go against. So really what we need to do is just slow down the growth and start requiring that these schools produce. Right now, we have about a 50% of our kids can read at grade level. So we're spending a top tier level. We're about number 4 in the nation as far as what we spend per kid, but we're only getting half of our kids where they can read at grade level. So, yes,
I
sir.
can't remember where I read it, it might have been one of the various Wyoming news outlets, but I thought there was a reference to pulling funding for the Buffalo veterans community.
Yeah,
Is that true?
Yes, so that did get in the final negotiations pulled out. It's $69 million for that. That's a federally funded deal, and what that was we've got the money in our bank, so we're going to do it instead of waiting on the feds, because they expect the cost of construction to continue rising. So that's what that was all about, and now they pulled the funding, so we're still going to be waiting on the feds to do that. Good question. Yes, sir.
Just want to put up my question earlier about the education. It's not that I'm against educating, putting money into kids. What I am against is what you just brought up, where the level.
Overspending and under-delivering.
50% they build, read, and write,
Under-deliver.
but we keep building buildings and think the building is the education. It's not. It's what's inside is the education. I think we lose track of that.
So I mentioned politically it's difficult to go against it, but also constitutionally. I mentioned earlier that we're required to fund education. And just like mental health, you know, the idea is to just throw more money at it. That's kind of a politician's way of dealing with things. But what I'm telling you, the best route right now is to keep pushing on this ed choice and getting the kids, you know, with parents who really care about the outcome, to get their kids in a different program. And when those kids leave the schools, that reduces the average daily membership. The schools are still paid by their average daily membership, so however many kids are there. So you're going to reduce their funding if you have more kids leave. Now let me tell you something about Arizona. When they were going down this route, 43% of people, which probably is about 60% of parents, polled that they wanted school choice. But when it came down to it and they had complete universal school choice, 3%. 3% took it up. So that means that, you know, when they push comes to shove, the convenience of having your kid, you know, there where they're playing football and those kinds of things, they take precedent. And, you know, if you have family members that have kids in school, I would encourage them to start pushing for and receiving these ESAs and using them. There's a question in the back. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think about that 3%, it'd take years for people to realize the difference between the parents that pulled their kids out and the ones that left them in, and to see the differential in the competency of the ones that pulled it in. It takes time for competition to manifest the results.
It really
of
does.
competition.
And we have been against real headwinds on another school choice, and that's charter schools. You know, charter schools usually perform pretty well, and they provide another choice, and that's actually taking funding from the other schools to do that. We have 3 schools right now, and we have 3 more that are authorized, so the whole state can have a maximum right now of 6 charter schools, okay? There are over 200 charter schools in Colorado, and it's a thriving program. So there's another method for school choice to try to create excellence.
So there's 3 charters now?
There are 3 now.
Can they build 3 more?
We can build 3 more. There are different groups applying for that and trying to do that.
Does the private get any of that stuff?
Does what?
Private Catholic Christian schools?
They would not get the charter school program, but this ESA, they could receive funding through the ESA, up to $6,000 per student. I don't know what their tuition is, but generally speaking, private schools for $6,000 can do what we do for $20,000 in the public schools. Thank you all very much. Appreciate your time.
John covered a lot of, a lot of the stuff, by the way, that I was curious about. And there's actually been, I'm going to bring Patty up here in just a moment, but this whole thing about President Driscoll, I pulled a news clip off of Wyoming State Daily. A frustrated Driscoll says Wyoming Senate has become diverse, mean. They published that. This is an online rag that published that. There's been a lot of people this last legislative session that have been paying attention to really what's going on in Cheyenne, and that's greatly appreciated. I just wanted to bring that up. There's a lot of people that sit in this room that actually work tirelessly to bring information to the state and to the people, and they continue doing that, and congratulations to you for doing that. With that, I'm going to bring Patty Judick up, and she can get started.
And I'll stay late if you have other questions.
Okay.
Thank you, Lyle. First, before I start, can we show our appreciation for these two legislators right here, Abby and John? I'm just always in awe, and even though she's not here, I'd like you to do it, and he's not here, I'd like you to do an extra show, even more than for these two, for their spouses who have held it together, family and business, while they're serving us. Thank you, guys. Seriously, it tears me up. Before I start in on elections, I want you to know that as president of the Republican Women for Campbell County, please come join our group. We meet this Thursday. We're meeting at noon. We had a lot of input that we should meet at noon rather than at night. People are tired of going out at night for meetings, and that the people who are working could come. So we really have started kind of a new group. We've got the old guard, the uniparty people they're not participating anymore, and we have a new group. Oh, yes, Mark.
I think I believe spouses can be joined as associate members. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. Men can join as associate members, and it's 25. Is that right, Janet? Yeah. I think it's 35 to be a member and 25 for an associate member. And so we're really trying to do a lot of work this year. The group has kind of been, I think, a little bit stagnant for a couple of years. Is that fair to say? And we're going to not be stagnant. We're going to be out there and working. And so please come join us. And one of our first events is a week from, week from Thursday. The 21st is a town hall. And every single one of our legislators, including Mr. Driscoll, have committed to being there. Mr. Barlow has said he will endeavor to participate, is how he responded to me. So we'll see if that happens. But I know that these two will be there. And so please, and I'm going to send these around, please take as many as you want that you can share with people. Invite them to come. We are at the library, and we really want standing room only. Every one of our legislators, and we will have questions, and we're asking for input for questions that we can hold them accountable. That's the intent. So not only for them to share, but for us to hold them accountable for some of their choices. So that's on the town hall. Didn't ask if I could do this, but I'm going to. If you, speaking of the uniparty, trying to oust that group, bring in the Freedom Caucus, bring in more people for the Freedom Caucus, but not just the Freedom Caucus, but like-minded people at every level of our government, city council, and precinct committee people. If you are interested in running for one of those positions, please contact me. John, can they contact you? Sure. Abby? Let us know, because let us hit the wall a lot saying to God, I'm tired. I don't want to do this anymore. And God doesn't take that for an answer. He just gives you a little kick and he said, nope, you get to keep going. So here we are. We've talked about a lot of things over these last few years, but right now our focus is to get rid of the machines and return to hand counting. It is a hard fight. We have a great county clerk, but she is over her head in a lot of things. I met with Cindy as well as Michelle, the elections coordinator, last week. I know them anyway, I've talked many times, but sat down and really met with them. They're not against hand counting. They just don't feel there's enough time to make that happen before the elections. They're more like, well, can we look at it for 2026? In my opinion, and the opinion of most people that I talk to, we don't have time till 2026. We need help now. We need to get rid of the machines. Now, we have a lot of obstacles because the statutes, they have to be changed by the legislature. That's not going to happen until we get a majority Freedom Caucus. It's just not going to happen. For instance, one of the things that was brought up to me was that in this meeting is that Rule 15, now this is not a statute, but this is Secretary of State rule for elections, is that the results must be into the Secretary of State's office by 10:30 p.m. on election night. So if we do hand counting, how's that going to happen? It's not. I mean, it's really just not. So, thankfully, I have a direct connection with our very good Secretary of State. Speaking with him Saturday night, said, Chuck, what about this rule? Sure enough, put into place by his predecessor, signed by the governor. So rules have to be approved by the governor. So does our Secretary of State have the ability to change any of these rules before our elections? Nope, because our governor is not going to approve anything that our current Secretary of State has to say. Would you agree with that?
He vetoed ESG rules.
Yep, he vetoed, oh my goodness. However, what our Secretary of State did say, it would be unconstitutional to not accept a county's election results no matter what time they are received. So I will be going back to our elections office and sharing that with Michelle, the elections coordinator, and Cindy, that even though it's a rule, it's not an issue. So there's one, it's just like every single one of those. Every time we talk about something, they have their pushback on it, why it can't be done. Well, one of the things we have been working on is training for hand counting. They've done it in Missouri. She is the group that I am lead basically in the state of Wyoming. Is we changed our name. We had it as Wyoming Election Integrity, but we changed our name to Cause of Wyoming because we work directly hand in hand with the group called Cause of America. And that is Mike Lindell's group. He has funded it. He has full-time employees in it. We have bi-weekly phone calls that they work just with the people here in Wyoming. And so we're going along with them. They have hand counting. We have had training for that. Priscilla, you were there. Who else in here? Anybody in here? Mark?
I was.
Yes. So we have the hand counting and training, and I will be training on that. Quite honestly, what I'm missing right now and is more training right now online, but that's okay. I'll catch up on that. And so we will train people to do hand counting. So what I'm asking for right now is I have two different, I don't know if you call them, one's a petition and one is signing up, that you would be willing to help in hand counting. So I'm going to pass that out, And if you're willing to help with that, what that would entail is, of course, training, which, you know, we've gone through it. It's really easy, isn't it? Those of you who did it.
Yeah, it's not that bad.
No. I'm going to give you one. I'll put, whoops. Start one over here. If you'll sign up for that. And so originally we thought if you're an election judge, you can do the hand counting. But I've been an election judge. That's a 14-hour day. There's not a lot of brain power used in that election judging, but it's a long day. Then we did the training. We did 4 hours. We were exhausted. So there's no way that people who work as an election judge during the day could stay and go into the hand counting. And so we need a whole new set of people. But these are people that would come in at 7 o'clock. And now, some people say it would take hours. What's that?
7 o'clock a.m.
PM, in the evening. And some people say it would take hours. It doesn't need to take hours. If we have enough election judges, we can literally have a set of people for each precinct, or especially smaller precincts, we can do 2 or 3 precincts with one set of judges. One set would be at least 4 people per set. So we need a lot of people. Sharon's already been taking signatures, and they have well over 100 signatures. Their goal is 400. So if it's 400 in Sharon, we probably need at least that many in Campbell County. So that will be our goal. Tonight is the first time that I'm handing these out. So if you think that you know people who would be willing, and you want to take one of the extra pages that's in there, please do. My phone number's on the bottom. You can just call me to get it back to me. The second thing we're doing is this is a statement to our county clerk saying we want hand counting of paper ballots. Statutes do say the county commissioners have the choice of whether we do hand counting or not. There's questions on all of it. Definitely. But the commissioners in Campbell County, I think I can fairly say, they're on our side. They're in agreement. But it really needs our county clerk to say yes. County commissioners could say ability. That's not a good way to do it. Don't they work for us?
What is involved with hand counting? Can you tell us quickly? I mean, I'd like to sign up, but I don't know what it is.
Okay, the best I can do in a short period of time is you have a team of 2 who take the ballots and read them off, and we have a team of 2 who tallies. And it's literally a tally sheet with a pen that you dab as they're reading it. You just dab. And then when you're done with one page, whatever, you compare, make sure you're the same. If you're not, you go back and look at it again. It's simply 2 people, and it's 2 people for checks and balances. And that's one of the pushbacks we have is, well, there's no check and balance if we have people. We can't rely on humans. They make mistakes. They make more mistakes than machines make. But
They're honest mistakes.
You have checks and balances. So you have 2 people reading the ballot together so that you have the same thing being said. And then you have 2 people doing the tallying, and they compare every so often and make sure they're on the same page. Yes, Lyle.
Yeah, it works about the same way, because all of you have been in and voted during election time. When you walk up to your precinct, there are 2 people asking you your name.
Yes,
It's
yes.
the same example, and then 2 people are logging you. And at the end of the day, they compare notes or however many times a day, whatever. When I come in to vote, one person is taking down my name, checking my address, my ID, and the other person sitting beside that person is doing the same thing. It works the same way.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's how it's done. And also with that organization you're involved in, that gentleman that came into Family Life had a video of hand counters.
Dr. Frank, yes.
And they could probably find that online.
Yes, we're not using that procedure though.
Oh, you're not?
No.
Is it similar?
No, his procedure uses a clothesline.
Yeah, I think
It
it
goes
did.
around, yeah.
But it's kind of the same principle.
Right,
Using multiple people. to count.
right, so just using multiple people,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's very simple.
Is there an oversight practice? I mean, it's somebody that's from Campbell County to make sure that these are people from somebody, somewhere else or county. Is there somebody to oversee that?
Oh, the elections coordinator in elections office, the county clerk's office would absolutely have total oversight of it. And that was legitimately one of their pushbacks was, we already put in a horrifically long day and a horrifically long week and months. And I know Janet has been directly involved. She knows that. And they said, how are we going to have enough people to watch over on the hand counting? And what I said to them is, pull in more people or whatever. But what was done on that video you're talking about, Lyle, is there was a deputy involved. So pull in the deputies. They said, well, we already used deputies to bring the ballots in from the remote places. Well, yeah, but you're talking about a handful, right? It's only a handful of remote places, election sites. So there's a lot more than that many deputies. They could be oversight people.
So, I went to that presentation out at Family Life, that's been over a year ago. And they even, thank you. They even demonstrated, I forget the guy's name.
Dr. Frank.
Dr. Frank demonstrated, even in Campbell County, he showed the numbers. And there was a 10% deviation even in Campbell County. And I don't know what Cindy feels about that. She probably rolls her eyes, I don't know. But it's happening across the nation, there's deviations. And what happens is I suppose there are voters that are added to the rolls electronically and then taken off immediately after the elections. That's what I'm assuming, is that correct?
That's what we believe.
Okay.
That's been documented. And again, one of the things talking with them, and I highly, highly respect both Cindy and Michelle and their whole team. There is nothing, and that's what I keep reiterating to any clerks we talk about. This is not about them. They're doing a good job. They know what they do in their box, and they know they do it right. So it's hard for them to even consider that anything could go wrong. But what's wrong is technology, right? So just get rid of the machines. But one of the things I was going to say, address on what you said about the 10%. This is my favorite slide that Dr. Frank has. Well, actually, before I say that, let me say this. And I asked them this question. I asked pretty much everybody this question. Do you believe that in 2020, Donald Trump got 10, in the state of Wyoming, Campbell County, did Donald Trump get 10% fewer votes than he got in 2016? Do you really believe in the state of Wyoming that Donald Trump had 10% fewer votes in 2020 than he had in 2016?
Across the board in every county.
Do you, and you could go, well, he's pretty divisive, there is, a lot of people don't like him. Well, then let me ask you this. Do you believe that Joe Biden got, in the state of Wyoming, or Campbell County, or every county in the state, that Joe Biden got 10% more votes in 2020 than Hillary Clinton got in 2016?
Not in a million years.
No.
The people who don't want to admit it go, no, come on, this is Wyoming.
Yeah.
It didn't happen. And that was back to what you're saying. My favorite slides, he shows that every single state, and he bounces back and forth between them, and it literally changes 10% fewer votes for the Republicans and 10% more votes for the Democrat. Across the board in all 50 states.
Campbell County, I was looking at the numbers. Trump got 88%.
not a lot of room for fighting.
No,
Could I just ask?
but
a
there was
question?
still the deviation
It was
in numbers.
88 to 10 and 2% didn't vote.
I want to be part of the solution. I have a question.
Yes.
When and where is the training? Please.
We do not know. We're putting it together.
Because I can't drive, because I don't want to have to drive to Sheridan.
Oh, no, it'll be here in Gillette.
Oh, it'll be.
Oh, no, it'll be right here in Gillette.
Town?
Absolutely. Yes. In fact, I'm going to do some training for commissioners in Platte County next Friday, a week from Friday. So, because they want to see, how do you do this? So I'm going down to show them how to do that.
Yes. I just want to clarify something. When I went to Dr. Frank's meeting at Family Life, I started asking around town. One individual I ran across works for the county. And when a voting machine goes down, he's called in to work on it. And you remember the reply was that anytime a voting machine goes down, they work on it, they're recertified. He says, hell, I've never recertified anything I've worked on. They're not recertified people, not in this county. He works on them.
And the training we did was in this room.
Yeah, we did it right here in this room.
I need that.
Helen?
You were talking about the election judges, and it being a long day. How are they gonna be, it's already a long day for the election judges, so how are they going to participate?
No, they won't. You'll have two separate groups, election judges and hand counting judges. Holly?
Okay, I am an election judge, have been for decades. After the polls are shut, we have to take out anything that has a write-in. And then we have a book that we have to write in all the names it was for, what office it was for, and then tally how many votes. This is very similar to what you're talking about. Hand counting is not hard.
It's not hard. Janet?
The struggle the elections office has is finding judges for election day on those machines. So if people want this change, they're going to have to step up and volunteer because they're struggling to get the original set of judges. So the folks wanting this have to step up and get to work.
Yes, and that is one of the things that we have learned, and we were able to tell Cindy last fall when we met with Secretary of State Gray and had a meeting around our dining room table, is it is not up to the clerk to make sure they have an even number of Democrats and Republicans, because that's what I always thought was our hurdle for this. How do we have enough Democrats? It's not their responsibility, it's the party. The GOP party gets their people, and the Democrats get their people, and if the Democrats don't get enough people, then they don't have enough people, but that's not on the clerk. And she was, oh, thank you.
Right, that's in statute. The parties are supposed to.
Yeah, the
help
parties.
those judges.
And so with this, we have our GOP chairman's enthusiasm to do hand counting. So we have that option to go forward, to reach out to the party. I've never seen our party reach out and ask us to be election judges.
So,
No,
they haven't.
not ever. So now we have that ability to do that. Another one is, it should be up to each precinct committee man and committee woman, and there are several in this room, to go to your precinct and get people to step up to be judges. That will be the job of the precinct people. Precinct committee men and committee women don't do much, and they should do more, right? They should be more involved. This is a way.
Is there any way to get a comparison of the number of votes that went into the central collector machine from Wyoming versus what was actually received by that central collection machine? Because I was following the results the night of the election, and when the results froze, I thought, boy, that's just like an upgrade on my phone or my tablet or something like that. And the number of hours it was down for, I thought, if you look at the start and end of the time zones across the states and the overlap, because they start a bit early and a little late, I thought, man, is that just coincidence? I mean, I'm not aware of any time in history when the central collection machine, not the individual county machines, not the individual state machines, but the central collector actually freezes for several hours.
I don't have an answer for you on that. It's a good question. But I will tell you this. Sheridan County, in 2022, every one of their voting machines went down except 3, all at the same time.
Wow.
Now, it's defended by saying, well, I think that there was a programming error in it. Every machine except 3? Do we have problems in Wyoming? It's not up to us to prove that there are problems. It's up to their offices to prove there are no problems. Here is an option that we're presenting. Now, the materials that we have are out of Missouri. We're not going to change them to be Wyoming, and we're not even going to our clerk's or Secretary of State office and say, these are the forms you need to use. No, we're going and saying, we're helping them. We're just trying to help. Here are some opportunities. Or options, that's the word I'm looking for. Here are some options. We'll help you. We're here. Here's another reason why we're collecting signatures to actually do the hand counting. Super Tuesday. Anybody hear about some social media sites going down all morning? AT&T. Let's see, the only 2 that didn't go down were Telegram and Truth Social.
Yeah.
Instagram, Facebook, whatever else is on there. I'm not on any of those. So they all went down for several hours. What happens if electricity or whatever, I guess not electricity, whatever, I don't know. What happens if it goes down on election day? Guess what? We're prepared to step in and help count the ballots. Is there even going to be an election? There's another good question. No, I don't have an answer for that. Yes.
Do we have in Wyoming mail-in ballots? Because we're new, so we don't know.
Unfortunately.
Okay, so there is.
Unfortunately, but thanks to our legislators last session, they changed instead of having 6 weeks open voting to only 4 weeks.
Oh.
That's a start. We need to have, and here's the other thing, I beg of you to communicate to every person you know. Vote. Very easy. In person, at the polls, on the day of election. The biggest problems we have of what we understand from all of the research is the absentee and open vote or early voting. We have no choice on that until we get a true conservative legislature to change any of that. We can't. What can we do? Well, we can do a start. Let's get rid of the machines. Yes.
If a train derails, I looked this up, or if you lose an engine on an airplane, those are called reportable events, which automatically mandate an investigation until the root cause is found.
Yeah.
How can we have all these technical failures?
By the way, did anybody ever read anything about those machines going down in Sheridan? Nope. Not reported. Yes. Yes.
Well, I think I read that for Carrie Lake, where is she, Arizona? That in the Republican strongholds, day of voting, they weren't allowed to vote because they said the machines were down.
Yeah.
And they were told to go somewhere else where they were then told either you already voted or something. So.
And all these people that had to go somewhere else, how many of them went somewhere else and how many of them went, forget it.
So I agree without, I don't like that mail-in voting, but then you say, okay, vote day up, but then that happens. So is there a plan B for that happening that day? Like maybe they could have a hand vote. Maybe they could have hand ballots right there. Oh, the machines aren't working. Here's a hand ballot that I would count.
Well, hopefully we'll go to, well, we already have paper ballots, but I gotta wrap this up because we're at 7:32, and I have just a couple really quick things. South Dakota has 5 counties that they do it differently. Rather than having to petition for the whole state to Secretary of State office, they can go by counties and have a petition that goes to their auditor, which then goes to the commissioners, etc. We don't have that, but as they have been doing that in South Dakota, and they've been knocking on doors getting signatures on the petitions, they have found that 80% of the people do not want machines. I shared that with Cindy and Michelle. New Hampshire have 24 counties that have committed to hand counting. There's other states that have counties committed. After the 2023 elections with the WMD device I've talked about before, that's called the Wi-Fi monitoring device that Franklin Dell and Cause of America has created. It monitors whether a machine is connected to the internet. And it can get rid of, so like in this room, it can say, I don't want the cell phones, I don't want this. I want to know if that picture, that camera is connected. And it can go down directly to the machines. And I'm very happy to say that both Cindy and Michelle said yes, they would like one of those devices. It's $500. Eichlandale is providing that for free, so I'll be letting him know that our clerk wants one. And when they use that in the 2023 elections, at least 200 counties, clerks said, our machines are not connected to the internet. They use that device, and guess what? They were. And all 200 are going, or at least 200, so I don't know how many said that, but 200 counties after the 23 elections are going to hand counting this year. We have to change our legislators, not these two, please. But that's the only way that we're going to get any changes in our statutes on our elections. The rest has to come from the grassroots. We do need help convincing. Write letters to your clerk, write letters to your commissioners, and support. I need help, you guys. Some of these counties have several people working, and I know I've said this back when I started a year ago or whatever, and I had a list, and I don't have it because we never quite got together. But my phone number's on the bottom of that page, or you can call Lyle or anybody and get my number. Yeah, he'll find me. I'm on Facebook. You can connect there. Patty Forgy Junick, the only one in there. And come help me, please.
Do what?
Just be supportive and be in a group meeting, and that it's not me alone in Campbell County. And I'm not saying that I have to be alone. It's just that's just how it's gone so far. I think I've got everything.
And I have.
Oh, one more thing.
Okay.
We have full support from our Secretary of State and his office for anything the counties need to do hand counting. They are all for it, and they will help. So we've got their support.
So a question to you is these Wi-Fi devices that are allegedly on the voting machines, who puts them on?
I believe they're manufactured in China.
So
They have a
the,
lot of cheap labor over there.
yeah, okay, so the companies that are leasing or selling the machines installed in, that's where they're coming from, okay.
And you can't tell. The clerks cannot see it. If they open up the machine and look for it, then it, what's it called? It decertifies, or the whole contract. It voids their,
It's the contract.
But our machines in Campbell County are not decertified.
not recertified.
I talked to the person that works on them.
They're not recertified.
They're not recertified.
The certification comes so many days before the election. Somebody has to go in and sit and load it with ballots, and then they back count it, and they have double. And there again, they're short. Sometimes I've been in there all by myself on that certification that comes before they start.
So what happens if a machine goes down in the middle of an election day?
That guy you're talking about comes in and starts it. I don't know that. Well, we did have one or two go down during election.
So he fixes it and closes the door and says, there you go.
I don't know because it hasn't been in my machine.
Okay, he says they're not recertified. He just gets them working again. Who was it that said something about, well, I've got this Lindell Offense Fund. I took this off the internet today. Hello, from Mike Lindell. 10 residents of Mercer County, New Jersey have issued county election officials alleging severe voter discrepancies and disenfranchisement due to multiple errors linked to electronic voting systems used in the last 2 elections. This was today. I took this off the internet. A critical error by voting systems manufacturer rendered all tabulators inoperable when they failed to update ballot IDs. Some of the plaintiffs were told they had either already voted by machine or voted by mail. None had. Mercer County voters were supposed to vote by paper ballot, and the ballots were then to be scanned into tabulating machines at the polling location. However, the tabulating machines throughout the entire county also failed to work on election day.
I was in New Jersey, I was part of the voting thing. We weren't allowed to check ID, we weren't even allowed to check if they were who they said they were. We're not allowed.
Because it's New Jersey.
New Jersey.
We
Why
have
left?
voter ID.
We didn't have ID, we're not allowed to ask.
Right. But we have to show proof of ID to vote here.
But that only started in the last election. Lyle just brought up, and it brings tears to my eyes, about this Lindell Offense Fund. Mike Lindell has given everything, millions and millions and millions and millions of his dollars. And is he broke? Close. And he has a fund called Lindell Offense Fund. If you have $10, please go on. Go buy My Pillow products. Help him.
Socks are great.
Yeah, this man has given his all, not for himself, but for this country. And he is made so much fun of. A lot of places you can't even mention his name or you're immediately discredited as being one of those right-wing conspiracy theorists. No, this man is absolutely incredible.
And now he has kitchen towels, just brand new.
Hey, I got a question.
We got his slippers.
Go ahead, one more question.
Has anybody seen the movie, Let My People Go?
No.
I haven't watched it yet, but it's on Rumble.
Everybody needs to watch that before the elections get any closer. I have 3 copies.
It's also free on Rumble now.
Yep.
Let my
But I have
people
3
go.
copies if anybody wants to use any of them to show to people.
Let my people go.
I have thousands of articles and posts I keep putting out on Save on Telegram that but if they don't want to look at it, they don't want to look at it.
Well, we can ignore and just assume psychologically that it's all going to go away. Because I just talked to an individual yesterday. He said, I'm not involved in politics because I don't want to know anything, and it just makes me feel like it all goes away if I ignore it.
Talk about hitting your sand.
Well, if I don't know about it, I don't have to stress over it. So, anyway, it's 20 minutes to 8. We ran about 40 minutes long. Do appreciate you coming in. We'll be back in 1 more month. And we're going to, who knows, we may have some of our elected officials back in here and talk about some more topic. I think we had some real good information tonight, and it looked like the crowd was really paying attention tonight, and we thank you for that.
Thank you, Patty.
Thank you.